Doesn't the New Testament say your enemy strikes you on the right cheek, also say that? Well, I think perhaps the phrase is metaphorical. No, I don't think it's I'm not so sure. I have thought about it a great deal, and I suspect he meant you must show courage. Be willing to take a blow, several blows, to show you will not strike back, nor will you return aside. And when you do that, it calls on something in human nature, something that makes his hate for you decrease and his respect increase. I think Christ grasped that, and I have seen it work. Good morning.
You know, I was standing over there, and my wife came up to me, and I thought as when she was coming to give me a hug, she said, "Stop doing this long." Today, we were going to be talking about engineering life, issues in genetic engineering, and something happened this morning. So we're talking about harnessing anger. This morning, when we came into the night spot where we shared last week, many of us were there going through the room and looking at how it was going to be set up. And nothing had been changed the way we'd asked it to be, and we just started calling things in. We're looking at how we were going to have to move things around. And the custodian came in and said, well, I got a call from, just was on the phone with my superior, and you can't be in here. And I'm like, we can talk to someone about it. She says, well, I was told you can't be in here. And then another gentleman comes in and he's very angry. And basically, this is where we're not supposed to be there. We got to get out of there right now. We're not allowed in here. And where's Wayne? Is he or something? He just disappeared on me. Well, Wayne did the same thing then because he said, he told me afterwards, he said, if I just stayed, we probably wouldn't even be here at all this morning because I didn't get this out. And I was just extremely angry the way that we were treated. Basically, told that we had to get out of here. We were not allowed in here. Now, what had happened was, the gist of it is we had gone through all the right channels trying to find out where we were supposed to be, but they didn't follow all the right channels and skip people they should have skipped. But no one called us to let us know. And as you know, this time before, we came in here on Christmas Day, and you remember walking in this room, and the whole floor was torn up. We didn't find out that we were here for worship. Well, we were half an hour into setup in the other room when they came and let us know we had to go. There was no interest, let us just be there to stay. So we were all a bit thrown, to say the least. And I spent probably the first hour after that just trying to walk it off, maybe more than an hour. A little bit of time trying to set some things up on the computer. So today's message is not what I had planned. And right now it's still being planned. So I'm going to ask your prayers with that too. But now I want to talk a little bit about, dealing with our anger and things that happen like this. So this is a story from Matthew chapter 21, where Jesus says, went straight to the temple, and he threw out everyone who had set up shop, buying and selling. And he kicked over the tables of loan, thank you, sharks, I love that. This is the message of loan sharks and the stalls of dove merchants. And he quoted this text, my house was designated the house of prayer, you have made it a hangout for thieves. Now there was room for the blind and crippled to get in, and they came to Jesus, and he healed them. All right, go ahead and let that go on. We'll come to this quote in a second. How do you think Jesus was feeling when this was happening? Yeah, he was mad. How many of you have been told not to get angry? Yeah. Right? Don't get angry. Be nice. Play nice. I think we have a hard time dealing with issues of anger because, especially as Christians, we're told that we're supposed to be nice. And look what Jesus did. Well, what does Jesus do? Jesus got angry. This is a quote from Gandhi, the scene we just saw from the movie, who says, I have learned through bitter experience the one supreme lesson, to conserve my anger. And its heat conserved is transmuted into energy. Even so, our anger controlled can be transmuted into a power which can move the world. Right? Now, when Jesus is in the temple and he's angry, is he hurting people? No. But is he taking action? Yeah, he's doing something. He's entering into this and doing something to make a difference. Now, one of the things, and I remember watching the video by Rob Bell called Store, where he talks about anger, and I think a very helpful thing he shares and others have shared is that, throughout our days, how many of you have little things that just kind of keep you off the path, right? I think sometimes we live in a culture, and for us as individuals, where there's this anger that's kind of simmering below the surface. It's just sort of bubbling, and little things can set it off. Someone bumps you with a shopping cart, or someone gets in line ahead of you, and then they have to have the check on the, on the price. You ever get that? You get the shortest line, it takes the longest, right? Little things that just kind of set us off. People who don't get our orders done fast enough. All these kind of little things. And I was thinking about this, and why is it we have this anger that's kind of just sitting there? I can remember as a kid, when I was in the first grade, my parents moved, and I had to go to a different school. And the school I'd gone to, I had these two best friends who hung out together, all the time. It was just, I really, felt like I had a place. And when I moved, it just didn't feel welcoming. It was like, I just couldn't fit in. And I can remember experiences that just made it clear by, some other students that I wasn't welcome. I was, when I got to high school, I was valedictorian. I was, all conference in track. We won a conference as a team, and I was captain of the team. And yet, all those things that you're supposed to, you think that are important, like prom court or homecoming court, I was never considered those things, or even class officers. And it always bugged me. I thought, I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do to be accepted, and I can't get accepted. And I think the reality is we live in this culture where we often are excluded. We do things to leave people out, right? And even when I got to college, because I remember in high school, I hit this point where I realized, the only thing I know for sure is that God accepts me, and that God loves me, and that God is there for me, and no one can change that, right? But then I got in this group of other Christians in college, and then some of them we would say things like, if you don't believe this way, or you don't do it this way, or you think this way, or act this way, then you really don't belong, right? And the reality is, I think part of the reason that we all have this anger that's kind of simmering under the surface is that we're being told all the time that we don't belong, and we feel like there's nothing that we can do about it, right? I can remember talking to some of the pastors in the community when they were sharing that when the first Gulf War happened, they had a prayer service for peace. That's what we do as Christians. They said we're at Wesley CME Church, and the church was packed. People praying for peace. This candlelight service praying for peace. So when the second Gulf War happened, we had a prayer service in town praying for peace. Do you know how many people came? 7. 7 people came. And I think part of the reason was that people felt like there was nothing they could do about it. They felt before, the person, we prayed, there's something we might be able to do. We might be able to have some impact on this, that peace might happen. Second time around, they felt like there was no way they could impact it. And I think we often feel powerless, and this anger just kind of simmers there, and it comes out all kinds of ways, but we don't know what to do with it. There's no way. I remember going to an anti-racism training, and it was really helpful. It was talking about long-term change, and I think it's important that we have long-term change. You're looking at like 25-year plans. But I really, what I ended up getting involved in is what we call congregation-based organizing. And one of the things that I remember one of the organizers saying to me, she said, I really like what this group is doing, and I'm dealing with racism, and it's important to have long-term plans. But she said, I can't wait 25 years to deal with my anger. Can't wait 25 years to deal with my anger. You look at Jesus, he didn't look at a long-term plan. He just enters in and he says, things have got to change. This is supposed to be a house of prayer. You're not treating it that way. And he takes action. And I think, I think it's important for us to see that we need to do things, to harness our anger, to let it just simmer there, and actually have an impact on the things that are pushing us down as people, that are saying that we don't matter. In the temple, do you know what was actually happening was, according to the law of the Old Testament, that when, especially at Passover, but anytime you came, if you were going to do an offering, there were all kinds of offerings you might have to do for things that you might have done. That you had certain things you had to offer. It could be birds, it could be lambs, doves, but they had to be perfect. There had to be no blemish. They couldn't be limp. Could have a limp. They couldn't have a deformity. And so, if you were coming from a long ways away, if you didn't actually live right there near Jerusalem, especially if you were living out in the Gentile land, there was no way you were going to get an animal to walk all the way there and stay unblemished. And so they set up a system where you could go and buy your animal right there, right? And also, you had to pay a tax, and you couldn't use the Roman coin because it had Caesar's image, and it said Caesar, son of God, which to Jews was sacrilege. So you had to change your Roman money in for the temple money, which did not have that, except the rate of exchange on the animals and the money was exorbitant. They were basically cheating folks, especially those who were poor, who couldn't afford. They had to do this. There was no other option if you were going to worship. So they're sitting there right in the temple court. Right as you had to go in, right there, the whole court of the temple was basically a place for loan sharks. It was like, the dollar, not the dollar stores, those lending stores, right? I mean, have you ever, I don't know if you've ever gone to one of those places, you know someone, you know that you can actually be paying 500% interest or more. There's like no limit. And that's what they were doing when Jesus said, this is enough. Now, that scene that gets launched from the movie Gandhi, I think it's interesting because, I can only find a movie where it was a Hindu who actually said, did you read what Jesus said? When he talks about turning the other cheek, and I know we did this a few weeks back, but it seems to me that with what happened today, this is very relevant to us. What did Gandhi say in that scene about Jesus talking about turning the other cheek? He meant it, yeah. The Anglican priest, he was saying, well, I don't think it was meant to take it literally. It's metaphorically, And he says, I don't think so. He says, I think what Jesus said was that if you resist someone who's doing evil without having to strike back, but without being turned aside, it actually calls in something later. It changes them, it leads them to something else, right? And, I've been thinking about this with what we're talking about here. Actually, go ahead and click on it, because I think that we have actually have that passage that's after this. Yeah. He says, have you heard it said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth? But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. I pulled it right there. We did this before. I know Adam was our example for this. We talked about the turning the other cheek. That when Jesus is talking about if someone slaps you on the right cheek, right? We think about hitting with a fist or an open hand. But which cheek are we hitting? The left, right? Did y'all watch Will Smith on TV? Come on, the recorder. You see, he did that. It's this little backslap thing, Right? That's a whole other discussion. All right. But a backhand is what you have to do. So if you slap on the right cheek, you're doing a little backhand. It's not about hurting the person. It's a symbol of your being an inferior. All right? Because in Jesus' culture, you never hit with the left hand because that was for other less clean duties. So you only use your right hand. So he's saying, this is the way you put an inferior in their place. It's how a master would treat a slave. Right? So if you're turning the other cheek, what you're saying is, I refuse to accept that I'm an inferior. Right? I refuse to accept that. Right? So, I was thinking about that today with what happened with us. For one thing, I realized, Jesus, King, Gandhi all talked about this. The reality is that people are people, and often the reason we react in certain ways is because of other things going on. We talk about this little anger we have percolating under us, just below the surface. The gentleman who came in who was not very nice to us this morning, he had to come and say, we didn't do anything. Why are you so angry? Basically, what he said was, this is my day off, and they made me come in to tell you this. Like, well, why didn't someone tell us ahead of time? No one told us ahead of time. Well, basically, they had their miscommunication, and it went all the way through, and people decided what they were doing, but no one ever contacted us. And he was angry because he had to come out and deal with it. And so he let us have the anger that he had against what was going on. And so, one of the things, one of those things, Gandhi says this, and I think looking at what Jesus was about, is saying, we all are just like each other. Do we want to condemn each other for the same sins and failings that we all have? So part of this is Jesus saying that, saying, look, the people who are acting this way, there's something else going on. And you need to stand up and say that you're a person and refuse to accept it, but you don't need to strike back at them with the same thing. Right? And so I had to do a lot of praying about that this morning. So, Wayne too, right?